Ta-da! Welcome to episode number 112 of Manifesting with Meg, Conversations with Extraordinary People. Tonight, I have wonderful repeating guest, Mike Spatola. He is an educator and an influencer, and he is magic. So without further ado, we're going to take you guys through May, the awakening to your creativity, one of my favorite things, year of empowered through purpose, transformation, dreams, inspiration, true happiness, and discovering bliss. We're always just a conversation away from extraordinary. It's time to wake up to a universe packed with possibilities. And without further ado, let me introduce all of you to Mike Spatola. Mike taught for over 41 years. He's earned several recognitions for his teaching and coaching. He was Teacher of the Year at Trinity Prep, awarded Faculty Chair in History, and voted ISL Boys Basketball Coach of the Year while at Lawrence Academy. He received Durham Academy's prestigious F. Robertson Hershey's Distinguished Faculty Award, and he was inducted into Trinity Preparatory School's Athletic Hall of Fame in 2018. Mike cites two mottos that serve as motivational forces during his career. Author and historian Henry Adams once said, "A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops." In 1980, at a turning point in Mike's career, former legendary UCLA basketball coach John Wooden wrote in a letter, "No spoken word, no oral plea can teach our youth what they should be, nor all the books on all the shelves. It's what the teachers are themselves." And then Coach Wooden closed his letter with, "He answers prayers." So without further ado, 3 times the charm, I bring to you season 6, the inspiration of Mike Spatola. Welcome tonight again. Yay, but we have a month of May, not January, where we usually go forward. So this makes it a little different.
Thanks, Meg. Great joining you again. Yeah, 3's a charm. I hope so. And to all the moms and to you in particular, belated Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you
I
so
hope you
much.
had a great day.
It was, it's always kind of bittersweet at the same time as, wonderful, because I have my beautiful kids, and I know your family runneth over with your beautiful family, your kids, your grandkids, your twins. You got new twins in the family. How wonderful is that? So thank you. I really, really appreciate that. May, they say April showers bring May flowers, and I like to have that concept in mind when you go out there and you keep planting the seeds of your life. And certainly today's theme is something that definitely takes that and adds to it, because it talks about taking risks. What do we have to lose? And I'm going to go ahead and give you today's quote, which is one of my favorite author, Paulo Coelho. He says, "You have to take risks. We will only understand the miracle of life fully when we allow the unexpected to happen." Like I said, Paulo Coelho, and that's Down by the River Piedra, I Sat and Wept. I love that book. It's wonderful. Go out and get it if you guys are readers. But I want to start here because I think this show is all about taking risks and what happens on the other side of, let's say, the leap of faith, the big jump. And, people ponder it, and perhaps they get stuck in their heads a lot if they are thinking about, a dream that they have. Then they want to make that dream a possibility. And then they realize it is a possibility because things start to fall in line. They see other people doing it. And then they have to start, pushing them toward that, let's say, that cliff where they'll have to jump and see what happens. And, that's where the courage sets in, or maybe not so much, and you just do it scared. But I see the idea of sometimes if you dream big, those risks may feel bigger. That comfort, that we feel when we're, in that known, jumping out into the uncertainty and the unknown. So one of the things I want to start off with, especially, it's not for the faint of heart, obviously, you meet rejection always along the way. However, as long as you keep moving forward, and I have a wonderful friend who always says, "Avanti, sempre avanti," in Italian means go forward, always forward. You continue taking those creative risks all throughout your life at whatever stage you are, then, it becomes more exciting, perhaps more fun. And, there's always that push, because at the end of the day, we only have the dash, that short time that we run this world. Like we walk this earth, and we want to do with that what we came here to do. So I'm going to throw it back to you. How do you see this theme, and how is it what does it mean to you? And then tell me how it played out in your life.
Well, I absolutely subscribe to Coelho's
Mm.
quote. There's no question about that. My life is probably exemplified by that statement. Um, but I'd also like to share some other comments or statements that have been made about risk taking
Mhm.
that I'm fond of. So one would be progress always involves taking risks.
Mm.
You can't steal second and keep your foot on first.
Ooh,
Now, as a lover of
I was gonna
baseball, and I
say.
know your dad is a fanatic of baseball, I thought that was apropos. That definitely applies. Another would be, do not want to be safe and good. Do you want to be safe and good, or do you want to take a chance and be great?
Mm,
Hmm.
I like that.
Another is, to win without risk is to triumph without glory.
Hmm.
And then one of my favorites by Helen Keller um, is, quote, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And
Okay, well.
it's just unbelievable. Now, I will say this, that whether it was as a student transferring high schools or in college transferring colleges, both which involved a risk, um, and then of course taking a job with an insurance agency out of college, leaving that job, going to Disney, where they were trying to channel me into or prepare me for a job in marketing and advertising for men's clothing.
Hmm.
And it looked like it might be a great career.
Yeah,
Um, I had a dream to teach and coach, as you know.
yeah.
And so I was going to uh, persist in trying to accomplish that goal, to achieve that dream. And so you have to obviously establish a game plan to ultimately make those changes, risky changes, because by then I am married. Uh, by the Disney period, we had a child on the way. By the time I left Disney and went to Trinity, there were two children in the household. So these were risks. But here's the thing that I would tell anyone, and I know this may not apply to everyone. I never, ever, not one time, considered these changes, these decisions I was making that involved me alone initially, and
Mhm.
then ultimately one, and then three others, and then eventually a family of six. I never once looked at it as a risk,
Hmm.
because if I considered the risk, I would have never taken the leap.
Mm.
I would have never left first base,
Wow.
because there's a certain comfort level one has. I, I mean, for goodness sakes, people still ask me now, why after 10 years? And I've even said, after Trinity Prep was a place that provided my first teaching opportunity, coaching opportunity, administrative opportunity, established dear, dear lifelong friends, students that I still laud and mean more to me now than they did when I was there. I hope they feel the same way about me. Um,
Well, I mean, it goes without saying, this is my 3rd interview with you, so clearly I
have to if I thought about, and I've looked at Trinity, 41 years I could have spent at Trinity, but 41 years would have left me with a book with one chapter. I have a book that has not only 4 states but 6 schools. Um, Now, some would argue against that. Each of those situations was worthy of a risk.
but I have a better question for you. I have to ask this because this is kind of where, I am curious. So when you retired, which it's been how many years now?
It's 5 in
5
July.
years, 5
Yeah,
years. Was that a risk for you?
it would. Uh, well, yeah,
I mean,
you got me. In
I
retrospect, probably, but as we have probably discussed before, maybe we have not. For 41, I've always been a front loader. In other words, to me, the preparation, whatever it is you're doing, it's preparing.
Right.
I know you are an incredible preparer for your show, for whatever it is you are endeavoring to do. You prepare with the best of them. So to me, I would spend the better part of June and July, and since we started school usually mid-August in the South, by the time I'm starting school, I'm already prepared, and all I necessarily need to do is amend and revise as I go, and be flexible, taking risks with what I had planned, and be willing to make adjustments. If I remained in the classroom and I could not continue to front load all of me into the position of the job, wherever I was, I never wanted a student, a parent, this is my fear now, or maybe my anxiety. I never wanted a student, a parent, or my colleagues, especially members of my own department, to say, you know what, Spatola lost a little bit off his. Once I was ready to retire. I could not continue to do what I was doing without the fear that I wouldn't be able to walk into that room in year 42 or 43 and give it that same energy, enthusiasm, and effort that I had. And I was ready. Now, there's another side to this as well, and I don't mind stating it publicly. Teaching now is a lot different than when I started compared to when I finished. There is more on a teacher's plate, to the point where I did have a group of parents one time ask me if I had to do it all over again, if I would do it all over again. And I said, under the same circumstances back when I started in 1977, yes, absolutely. In 2018 or 2016, when I was being asked that question, I said I'd probably have to think about it. Their response to that was, well, why? And I said, well, here's the main reason. Students are students, kids are kids. Regardless of the sector you're in, what you teach, kids are kids. Parents have changed. County boards of education have changed. State legislatures have changed. Being put on the plate of a teacher, including a school like Durham Academy, private and independent, never was there a summer where more wasn't being put on our plate to prepare for the following year. And a lot of it was extraneous, and I felt personally and professionally that it was taking away from my family time that I valued, and secondly, and maybe even more important professionally, is that it was taking away valuable teaching time. In other words, where I could be preparing the next best lesson. And what you're doing is you're asking me to do things administratively that just, I think, bog teachers down. So there was that piece as well.
So let me ask. So you finished what,
2018.
18. Okay, and you just recently went back for.
I did, which is very interesting, and again, a risk. And here's the risk. When I retired in 2018, I was asked by my department chair, Dr. Rob Policelli, whom I absolutely adore. He asked if I would be willing to come back and be a substitute. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to be anybody's substitute, because once I get put on that list, I could be in the math classroom and I could be in the English classroom, or I could be, no, thank you. So he respected that. And I said, Rob, I'm not ready. It'd be like, welcome back, Cotter. Here comes Spatola again. I thought he retired. And so I didn't want to do it. A year into retirement, probably that spring, he contacted me again. He's a persistent little booger. And he asked if I'd be willing to cover as a leave replacement, like a maternity leave.
Okay.
And I said, no, I don't think I'd want to do that either. Well, it's in the history department. No, the pandemic hit.
Right.
And at that point, he asked me once or twice again if I'd be willing to teach an elective, if I could create the elective, or if they developed one, if I would teach it. And I told him, no, Rob, for me, 41 years meant being in the room or on the field
Yeah.
with my students and with those athletes. I'm not going to do anything technologically. I'm not going to, no, it's about relationships. It's about building trust and
Yeah.
communication. And so I declined the offers at that point. Lo and behold, back last fall, towards the end of October, actually it was probably mid-October, I got called for jury duty. We live right across the street from the Durham County Courthouse. So it would be easy for me to go to and from the courthouse to report to jury duty. But of course, I, like every American I know who's been called to jury duty, does not want to do jury duty. I happen to be one of those oddballs who truthfully loves being called.
Okay.
As long as it's not while I'm working or teaching.
Got it.
I'm more than happy to do my civic duty. And of course, our system is rooted in having a jury of your peers. And so I got called. And to make a long story short, they took the pool of jurors, and there had to have been about 50 of us. And when they took us from the 3rd floor jury meeting room up to the 7th floor and took us down the hall to the courtroom where we would go through the voir dire process, I realized this was a big deal, because we're not talking about a civil court case. We are now going into a superior courtroom.
Yes.
Come to find out that the trial is a young man who's standing trial for murder.
Oh, okay.
1st-degree murder. If we find him guilty, which has to be unanimous among the jurors, if we find him guilty, it's going to mean life imprisonment. When the crime was committed, he was 26 years of age.
Wow.
He was now 20 years of age. It was not a question of whether he committed the crime. They admitted to that. It was a question of self-defense.
Okay.
Well, I won't take you through the whole process, but I will tell you that for me, while I was more than happy and willing to do it, there were times when I probably, as they seated me number 12 juror, Mike Spatola, and then I went through the questioning process with prosecution and defense teams, there were definitely times when I probably could have begged out by simply saying something outrageous. My civic duty, responsibility, accountability kicked in. If I were standing trial, I would not want somebody like me on the jury. But there was a risk. The risk was, this is a murder case. I have to make a judgment and a decision on someone's life. And when I wanted to be compassionate, empathetic, and sympathetic towards the defendant, I looked over at the deceased family. He was 23 when the crime was committed.
Oh, wow.
And now he would have been 26 years of age. Both of these young men are victims of incredibly poor upbringings. So, I mean, as a former teacher who has taught young men and young women in similar situations, not quite committing murder or homicide or standing up to somebody self-defense wise, you know, this is risky for me, because I'm not too sure I want to make a judgment decision like that. Well, I did, and I'm proud of the decision that we made. We did find him guilty, and it was unanimous. And I was proud of the team of jurors who served with me. They wanted me to be the foreman. I was the elder in the group, and I said, no, I'm better as a backbencher and just being passively aggressive if necessary. But it was an absolutely incredible experience. Well, Meg, as I went through that process, I'm saying to myself, my God, if I was still in the classroom, this was stimulating. I went home every afternoon between 4 and 5, and I couldn't wait for the next day. Dr. Rob Policelli, Mike, we have this maternity leave situation in the history department, and I want to invite you to come in and take the class. Meg, it would be one class, 12 students, sophomore history. We'd start with Napoleon, the French Revolution, Napoleonic Wars. I'm like a pig in mud. And so I immediately wrote back and said, let me check the calendar and check with the boss, and we'll see what happens. And I say that affectionately, the boss, because she's the one who
Yes.
plans these vacations. I knew one was coming up in the Southwest, so I had to be sure of the dates. There was no way I was turning this down. And so for 6 weeks, I'm going into this classroom. And even though I'm not
Wow.
talking about the jury system or criminal law or that experience, I just felt so stimulated by this. But there's a risk.
Mm.
You just went through my bio where he's won a chair for History of Arts Academy. And the highest honor at that same school, Durham Academy, the Hershey is like the highest honor,
Yeah.
this Distinguished Teacher Award the school has. Once you reach that level, you might as well retire.
Oh,
So here
geez.
I am. I'm going back in the classroom, and am I thinking risk? No, I'm thinking hot diggity. Let me back in that
Yeah.
classroom with these kids. Now, what was interesting is prior to starting, because no one really knew the exact date because it was a paternity leave, and John's wife, they weren't real sure when she would, deliver.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was planned that she was having a C-section or they would induce labor. But in any event, so I asked John and Rob, the department chair, if I could come in and observe the class on 3 occasions. I wanted to A, see him teach, what his style was.
Yeah.
B, I wanted to see in the second class, I wanted to see the kids in action because they were doing sort of like a role play. So I would see those students in action. And then the third time I was going in to a morning class, they have like a block rotating schedule. So the first two were like right before lunch.
Were you still trying to discern whether you were gonna actually teach the
No,
class?
I had already accepted.
Oh, you already accepted it, okay. So
I
it
already accepted.
was
So
so you did it what, for them to see you and just to
well, I did it more for my own. Um, I wanted the kids to meet me, and John was kind enough to allow me to give a little brief background information to the kids.
okay.
There were a few in there who knew me through basketball, like my son Chris, who runs a basketball camp there. There were a couple of, I want to say girls, maybe 2 girls and a boy, whose older siblings had me as a teacher. So the reputation sort of preceded me with those kids. But I just wanted to get a sense and a feel for how John conducted the class, what his expectations and rules were. And I wanted to see the students in action so that because my style was going to be very different than John's. And he's a gentleman, very kind, very thoughtful. And I hate the expression low key, but he was definitely low key. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go in there like gangbusters. I'm going to be bouncing off the walls, and these kids are going to be like back in their seats going, oh,
Yeah.
what is with this guy?
Well, I
But
have a question, like, so when you actually first came to teach them the first day, were they, like, sizing you up, or were they just like, "Bring it?"
oh, sure. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. But what I did, and here was the other, maybe not, my reputation was at risk, but after 5 years, like you've already proven yourself.
Yeah.
You, so I didn't really look at it as a risk. I'm just simply for the subject, the topic, the theme
Right.
here. It could be viewed as risky, and I could have very easily said to Rob, thank you very much. I realized you say no enough times, they're going to stop inviting you. And so I was open to the thought, I'd like to get back on the saddle
Yeah.
here. And so, yeah, they absolutely did. But what I did the first day, and it was also a test for me to see after now how many grandkids, and I've definitely softened up a little bit. And,
Yeah.
uh, you know, I, am I going to be the same Mike Spatola? Or am I not? It wasn't about the content, although I had absolutely no materials because I had tossed all of it
Oh.
after I retired, or much of it. And then when we downsized from a home to the apartment downtown Durham, I threw out the rest of it, figuring I'm probably never going to do this again.
Wow.
And what I had may not be apropos for what I might be teaching if this ever happened.
Yeah.
So I'm starting from scratch, but I knew the material. It was like riding a bike, actually.
Yeah.
But that first day, interesting question. What I did was I just went uh, to each student at their desk or at tables, and I fist bumped them.
Ha!
I fist bumped them, introduced myself. I'm Mike Spatola. Who are you? And so I ran around, cracked a few jokes as I was going around, and then went through what my expectations and whatnot were. I had his syllabus, what his expectations, and
Right.
so that I could, and I conveyed to them that they were in a very tough situation, that they didn't ask for that. It was heaped on them. So I tried to establish a rapport that way. But by the same token, I said, and you all know that I chose you. I came
Mm.
in on 2 occasions. The third occasion, I actually didn't have a chance to teach, go in and observe. They called me in to start that Friday. So I was sort of like, uh-oh. So I said to them, I chose you. It was a blessing because it came at the greatest time for me on the heels of that jury experience to
That's
just
so cool.
feel invigorated by something
Mhm.
that, and it was a challenge. It was more of a challenge for me than a risk.
Well, I'm gonna use so, you've already set out a couple quotes today, but I'm gonna go ahead and introduce one that I did actually like. "You cannot swim for new horizons until you have courage to lose sight of the shore." William Faulkner. Now, the question that I have for you with regard to this particular quote is, what about your life has been one of the most, I want to say, outside of school, to be quite honest with you, what has been one of the most worthwhile risks that you've taken in your personal life?
Certainly transferring from St. John's to Florida Southern,
Yeah.
New York born and bred,
Yeah.
very much in a way closed minded, but needing to get out and about, get away from family, um, and experience the South. I was very immature as an 18-year-old, 18, 19-year-old, more mature than I was as a 15-year-old. But definitely there was an immaturity to me because the likelihood is I was on a path to maybe failing out of St. John's.
Okay,
Uh,
that I guess that there's 2 ways to look at that, is lose sight of the shore. I guess,
yeah.
you might wanna lose sight of the
Oh,
things
yeah.
that you aren't
Ab-
so,
Absolutely. But I was mature enough to see the writing on the wall and
Mhm.
to say, I need to change.
Well,
And I need to, as uh, who is the person talking about the two paths? You have two paths to take.
T.S. Eliot, no?
Helen.
Yeah.
You have the two paths. So I'm on a path to destruction here,
Mm,
and I can choose the path. So from that regard, I was definitely, I looked at it with a degree of maturity. While it was risky again to make that change from St. John's and all that could have meant to me career wise and
yeah,
basketball wise, academically it was a suicide mission. So, and even socially, I needed to broaden my scope and horizons. And so I made the adjustment and change. That was very risky. And I took a look at what the comfort level was, the shore, and I said, I'm willing to give this up and I need to give this up
yeah,
and be courageous to take that next step. And it
yeah.
really was as difficult as that adjustment was that first year, there's no looking back. That gave me a foundation to
Yeah.
my passion for political science and history and uh,
So why did you pick this particular quote when you were perusing for your
you
inspiration?
know, I I have the time now I'm not necessarily reading books from cover to cover. I'm delving into excerpts
Ah,
of books and famous quotes, speakers, leadership, courage,
yeah,
risk taking, as our theme is for this
yeah,
evening. And so I read these excerpts from various sources about these topics and these themes, so that then I can expound on them either via social media or just simply feel better about myself in my decision making process because you're only as old as
yeah.
you feel. The other decision, though, that was very risky for me was more of a personal level, and I would say for Pam as well, is like your family. I grew up and was baptized as a Roman Catholic, and you know the way the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
to some extent, still is. But Pam was non-Catholic, Christian, but non-Catholic, and so um, there were several decisions that were made leading up to our wedding where the risk for me, and I think to a degree with Pam as well, but in most traditional marriage situations, it's the groom and the
Mm.
groom's family who has to cede things to the bride. Okay. So there was an issue of would there be a priest in the Protestant church? My two younger sisters at the time, because my mom did remarry and I was blessed with two younger sisters. My younger sister is 15 years younger than I. So they were very young. I was married at 22. So they were really young. They
Oh,
were
yeah.
supposed to be in the bridal party. Um, they were not allowed to be in the bridal party.
No.
There were people who really challenged me and threatened me because of what decision I had made.
Ooh.
And so the risk for me was either stand firm and do what I believed and Pam believed was right,
Yeah.
which we did. And 47 years, again, there's no really looking back, right? 4 children and blessed now
Mhm.
with 12 grandkids. Um, Life has been great to us. God is definitely great.
Yeah.
So, but there was a risk, Meg. The
Yeah.
risk this is 1976. And so your parents in particular could very much relate to,
Yeah.
um, and even working in Episcopal school, there were questions, not necessarily coming from family, but friends with whom I went to high school. Um, and then why would I leave a Catholic university to go to a Methodist school?
Oh, interesting.
So all these were all adult-like risks
Yeah.
that I was willing to take. But again, not ever. If I had to give up family, or if I had to, I would never give up principles.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, where. And so as I lose sight of that shoreline, I, it's the decision that you make to lose sight of it, and then you move away and you fulfill your goals, objectives, and dreams. And at that time, a dream for Pam and me was to be married and start a family. And so
Yeah.
we were willing to take those risks.
I hear what you're saying, and I really do want to reiterate to the fact of time, like a lot of like our children nowadays, they'll see the world through the eyes that of their technology, of
Right.
their experience, of their what they know to be true. And they don't see the other stuff that goes on where things that are taboo, what you should and shouldn't do.
Right.
And then this freedom to actually show up authentically. But I love how you say you grounded in your values. It's not that you threw those to the side, you actually embraced what that
Right.
was, and as a couple, which is the value, the two become
Yes.
one, you made those determinations as to how you wanted to proceed, which I think is fascinating because when you're taking a risk because other people might not agree with you,
Right.
at least you and your partner are on the same page. I wanted to share
And
the
I think
other two other of your
Sure.
quotes that you shared with me. In all forms of leadership, whether you're a coach, a CEO, or a parent, there are 4 words that one said can bring out the best in your team, your employees, and your family. I believe in you. Those 4 words can mean the difference between a fear of failure and the courage to try. This is just amazing because it's Mike Krzyzewski, right? Krzyzewski.
Krzyzewski.
Oh,
Yeah, Polish.
Krzyzewski. Okay.
Yeah, we Italians have a hard time
Yeah.
with our Polish.
Yeah, that
You'd
but
be the first to admit that.
I first of all, I definitely love this because the whole idea of belief in self, belief in others, and that's how I end my stuff all the time. I believe in you. And I think that, coming back to the whole idea, take risk, what do you have to lose? I think at the end of the day, and it goes back to your point with what Jay St. John says, what's your gut? If you got to go with your gut and your gut's well formed, you've had years and years of wisdom and foundationals and opportunities to play out one way or the other, how you choose to move forward, then the thing that the last, I guess, ingredients would be that belief in that, whatever that is. So tell me, why did you pick this quote for tonight?
Well, first of all, I absolutely believe that the most powerful words you can say to anybody outside of maybe "I
Mhm.
love you"
Yeah.
is "I believe in you."
Mhm.
And even when I had the recent experience in the paternity leave at Durham Academy,
Mhm.
there were numerous times in that classroom setting. Now, they had changed their schedule because of the pandemic so that our classes were meeting 75 minutes,
Oh, okay.
which is in a way pedagogically ridiculous. But when the attention span of a young
10
person,
seconds.
my own attention span is probably about 20 minutes. So,
That's great.
and so, but that's another issue for another day. Um, but I countless times I said to them in some way, shape, or form, I believe in you. You can do it.
Yeah.
You will prevail. Persist. Hang in there. Um, because at the end of the day, there are people who trust you, are confident in your ability to. If you didn't have the ability to succeed at a place like Durham Academy, your parents would not underwrite your education at a school like at Durham
Yeah.
Academy. To say to an athlete, "I believe in you." Now, my experience in school with one coach and one teacher in particular was he was all about "I believe in you."
Mm.
And to this very day, Greg Walsh is a mentor that
Mm.
a son was named after Greg, uh,
Yeah.
because he always believed in me. I have had coaches who did not believe in me. And there is nothing that's worse a youngster, in my view, or even an adult in the workplace, to have somebody give them a feeling of inferiority or that they're inadequate,
Yeah.
that you're not confident in your ability to do the job you've entrusted them to do. So I just, I, Mike Krzyzewski and I have had a relationship now for decades. I admire him as now a retired coach, uh,
Mhm.
but and he could be the most demanding. I'm sorry, I'm using this bastard in the world. I mean, when he was at Army and then at Duke, and players could tell you, I'm sure, many horror stories. But ultimately, in the end, it was about his belief in them and
Yeah.
getting them over the hump so that they'd go into challenging situations and they'd be looking at that damn shoreline with the courage to go into battle
Yeah.
because he was at the head of the line. I just so believe in that. And I've had people in my life who have believed in me and have given me the confidence to be willing to take those risks.
I definitely think that, between I think, well, for me, actually, with the risks at the other end of the spectrum is just that how proud you are of that person who takes that jump, not knowing what's gonna happen. I know I sat
That's
with
right.
my daughter this last weekend while we were waiting for her to go on, and I know that she wasn't feeling 100%, and I know that she holds herself to such a high level of performance. And I was watching her and she was really like, and I kept saying, all I kept saying is, other than I believe in you, I'm proud of you. I mean, you don't shirk at, having perfect conditions around you to do what you need to do. So, yeah, absolutely. In many ways and shapes and forms that I wasn't her coach, but there I was sitting here next to her. And you can build someone up or you can tear them down.
That's
And when
right.
there's an opportunity, build them up for sure. That's a good teacher. That's a good coach. That's a good influence for sure. And and then going back to many different respects, there we are with the shoes and the line. And I love this because it'll actually have you looking at what you do to yourself. You box yourself in or you step out. So why don't you tell everyone? It says comfort zone. There's a line. This two green shoes, and I love the fact that you put green shoes. But and what does this mean to you as far as the whole idea about taking risks? What do you have to lose?
Well, it's very, very easy to stay in the comfort zone.
Mm,
It's easy. Once you're comfortable, uh, you have it made in the shade for the most part.
mhm,
At least that's been my experience. I was in a comfort zone at Trinity. I was in a comfort zone when I went to, well, maybe not so much at Lake Howell, but up at Lawrence Academy and then at Durham Academy. So, but you become stagnant, I think, if you don't consider now, and that's okay. I mean, there are people probably at Trinity for 40 odd years, and there are people at Durham Academy now celebrating their 45th year at one school.
mm,
Um, you reach a comfort level, and I think talking about running, you run the risk of getting stale and stagnant. And to me, life is a blessing, and it's to be lived.
mm,
And to live it, you do have to know where your comfort zone is, and then to progress, you need to go beyond
mm,
that comfort zone. So I just love what this symbolizes because it's the person in the shoes is there comfortable, and the person in the shoes is pondering and thinking, am I going to cross that line?
mm.
And if I cross that line, what's going to happen? And so
So many
I
things.
there's
So
so many
many,
things that
so
potentially
much
could happen.
waiting.
Now, if you're worrying too much about what potentially is on the other side, you're not going to cross it.
Yeah.
And I'm not demeaning nor am I belittling anybody who finds that comfort level and stays in it and is happy and content for the rest of their lives. I'm not about that. I'm just simply, for me, like those different schools by my choice provided different challenges, and they provided challenges in different parts of the country. That were fruitful experience. I think it's a risk worth taking. And it was, who is it that said it was I forget whether it was Arthur Ashe or somebody who was talking about, oh no, here it is. It's the author and motivational speaker, Eric Thomas, whom you may be familiar with, said, and I quote, to get to the next level, you got to learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm.
And being uncomfortable means that it's about taking some risks and being
Yeah.
willing to suffer the consequences or the joys of achieving whatever it is you endeavor to. So it symbolizes that for me. I love the photo. When I saw it, I said, that's
Well,
me.
interestingly enough, I think that, it depends if you trust the person who's giving you the roles. I think that that is really important as well, because if you have there's a trust that's built between you and whatever boss perhaps or guide or mentor or whatever you want to call that person, if there's a trust there, then you're more likely to step over the comfort zone, that line, because
Yes,
maybe they see something in you that you don't see in yourself, and they say, well, I believe in you, that component as
that's
well,
right.
and yet push you a little bit further, push you a little bit past what you thought was your limit.
His name was John Armstrong. Interesting name, Armstrong, Jack Armstrong.
Yeah.
And so John played for me. Um, and it was probably 4 of the toughest years of his sports career. But anyway, he he had graduated, and his dad uh, wound up being in the rotunda of the main school building. And I was coming from the faculty room towards the rotunda, and the dad was coming from an office beyond the rotunda, and we were about to converge in the rotunda area. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, why would, and he's approaching me. You can tell he's coming at me. John's already gone. I never had any complaints when he played for me. I coached his older brother in football. So what? But he looks like he's bound and determined. We converge in the rotunda, and he pulls out this loose leaf paper. And he says to me, Coach Spatola, I think you should have this. And I said, uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
If I ask, what is it? He said, well, I'll let you read it, but I just want you to know that it's John's essay for admission to colleges.
Oh, wow.
I said, well, thank you very much. My first opportunity was not 2 hours later. It was like I ran back to the back of the room, opened that up, and my eyes welled up because it's exactly what you just mentioned, Meg. John's essay was about, he had a ceiling, and Coach Spatola pushed him to a new ceiling that he had never believed.
Wow.
And if it hadn't been for Coach Spatola, I would have never, ever.
Wow.
And
that's
so
amazing.
with that, he wound up applying to some schools. You know how you get the reach and and you're going to get in, and then the maybes. Well, he wound up applying to a couple of reach schools because of that, because he felt that his essay and his experience in basketball, unrelated to academics, but basketball, really reflected his desire and his ability. When someone believed in him,
That's great.
he was able to. And with that, I proceeded to let his dad know and his mom know that I was floored by and proud, and it made it all worth it for me. Still, as a growing and young aspiring teacher and coach, it just made my day. It's why we do what we do.
Well, and you're telling the story how many years later, so clearly it had an impact.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Those are the best stories, as where you can remember back where you helped someone else, take a risk and perhaps pursue something that they wouldn't normally do. And that's a teacher. That is a teacher. Your job was well done for sure. And it still remains a job that you have, just in a different capacity. So at the outset, we always ask to pick a number and set your intention. What was your intention for this evening as we pursued and persisted to get this interview out here for sure?
I just want to do an advertisement, folks. I'm telling you, you got to read it. You got to get a copy and read it. And I can assure you, if you go through Meg, she will sign it to you.
I will.
For you.
I will.
All right. My intention was, since we're talking about risk and we've now connected to having a network of people who believe in you, wherever they might be, and they trust you, and they prod you, and they get you to persist, and they establish a resiliency in you because they model that behavior, and they are so confident, and they've built you up. And of course, on the heels of our good friend and teacher and mentor Jay St. John passing, I chose on page 54 Maya Angelou, one of my all-time favorites, and I know she's one of yours as well. But that's not why I did it. And at the top, February 18th, so we're out of the month of May, but nevertheless, I think it's apropos for the evening. People remember how you made them feel. And it says, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. And for someone to make you feel good, I think is the greatest gift that someone has to offer others. I'm sure students I've taught and athletes I've coached, John being one of them, I'm sure, could say, oh my gosh, he said this to me today in practice. Or, he made a comment in class today that just, the overly sensitive crowd today would really get on on your back about it, but it kind of hurt my feelings. But in fact, if you can kind of change that or follow up with something that's positive, I believe in you. I know you can do better. I trust you.
Yeah.
And you make them feel.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what Greg Walsh said to me on any given day. I've forgotten what my college coach said. How did that coach make me feel?
Mm.
How did that teacher, how did my mom, my dad, how did my friends make me feel? And when I think about Jay St. John, there was never a time. And listen, when I was the athletic director at Trinity, there were times when I sat in on meetings with him, and he could blister people. It wasn't his nature to do that, because he was cognizant about how people would feel when they left that room. And whenever I was in meetings with colleagues with him, it was about how we felt as a faculty, as
That's
a
really,
department.
yeah.
And if he could come up to you and say, "You did a great job. That was a hell of a lesson." Or when I was at Durham Academy and Michael Uckelsteiner, who was the upper school director when I arrived, and then in retirement, he had come back to be the head of school. I oftentimes would ask him to come in and visit my class, and there might be something that I'd be looking for. Maybe a balance in participation, Q&A, male to female, asking questions as opposed to calling on the volunteer versus the non-volunteer. Also, how did the plan go? Something more general. And there was one time where he came in and he observed, and at the end of the class, I was not satisfied with how the class went. We were doing some sort of, I don't want to say it wasn't a mock trial, but it was a role play of sorts. And it was very student centered.
Okay.
And I didn't think I did a really good job facilitating it. So I was blaming myself, not the kids. I took it on. And I said that to him. I said, "You know what? That was really crappy." And he looked at me and he said, "Are you kidding me? Crappy? Who else is going to know it's crappy but you?" I thought it
It's
was
true.
really good. And
Mm,
experiment. Now, for a school or an upper school director to believe in you that way, to have the confidence in you, now, maybe one of my faults at times is humility, too much of it. And so I'm taking the blame for something that he felt, no. Teaching is about risk taking and about going in and experimenting, and the kids did well, and I would have never known. So when you have that network,
yeah.
that's the deal. And so I thought this manifest was very apropos, and I would
Well,
encourage.
I do love that. I do love that. Well, for sure, how you made them feel is so important. And I think that when someone is about to take a risk, in their favor or against them, not such a good one, I think that the sage wisdom of someone who cares about that person, certainly not familial, perhaps outside the family,
Right.
like this gentleman that you impacted, and that the family literally came beelining it to you to share it with you. That's such a profound testament to how you live your life and why this topic is so appropriate for you. In fact, I know that you speak in the realm of schools, your professional life, your retirement, but even you just took a trip, and I can't let it go without saying, so I put the picture with the hat on, just hoping that you would share a little bit about that with
Yes.
us. And before we go tonight, before you give us your final inspiration,
I
perhaps
I
share with
I
us a little bit
I
about
would
that
love to.
vacation.
I would love to. I'm coming from the notion that we live today in a divided country.
Okay.
We have blue states, red states. We have West Coast, left coast, East Coast. We have folks in the Northeast living in an Ivy League tower. And I mean, these are all the things that are said about. And so Pam and I have always wanted to go out to the Southwest, and the trip, we started in Las Vegas and we went to Arizona. We visited all the canyons, and Arizona, Colorado. Then we wound up in Utah.
Oh, wow.
And
How long was
so
this trip in total? Just so we have.
the trip was 10 days. It's through Insight Tours,
Okay.
a little plug for Insight.
Yeah.
And we had a marvelous tour director, and we had just a phenomenal bus driver. And you do the maximum number of nights you're going to stay in a given place. Let's say in Grand Canyon might be 2, and then you're going to get on the bus and you're going to move to another venue to sightsee. And in the meantime, depending on your tour guide, this is an educational enrichment opportunity.
And
Which
you
it
2
was.
had not ever been to this area, this
No,
part of the
we had been to
country?
Yellowstone. I have been out west to spend time on a Lakota reservation,
Okay.
and we've been to California, and Wyoming, and again South Dakota, parts of Colorado. But we had never really been to visit the canyons,
Hmm.
which, so it's sort of like a bucket list, but bucket list is like an understatement compared to what. Have you ever been? You've been?
I've never been to
No.
Grand Canyon. No, I've not been. No, not
Well, Zion, the Canyonlands, Mesa Verde,
no.
and Grand Canyon itself. I would even put Zion ahead of Grand Canyon. But so it was our goal, our dream, to one day go out. And so Inside Tours, which we have done before in
Okay.
California and in Yellowstone and that area of the states, had this 10-day tour. So I'm coming from the notion that it's very important for me as an Easterner, born and raised in the Northeast,
Mhm.
that I have certain perspectives
Yeah.
that I absolutely have to get to other parts of the country to see not necessarily how they live, but what they're thinking.
Okay.
Because for me, a walk down the street talking to another tourist or native, someone indigenous to the area, and I'm not necessarily talking about native tribes, but rather people who have born and raised in the area, just chatting with them about how they're doing, what they're thinking, is very important. Because what I have found more oftentimes than not, this would include going abroad, traveling internationally, is that we have more in common than we have differences.
Hmm.
So what was very, very interesting is our bus driver, Lane Shepard. Lane Shepard is born and raised in the Southwest,
Okay.
Arizona. Uh, his dream is to buy with his son-in-law a ranch in the south, I believe he said eastern part of Arizona. And so I said, well, what does that entail? And he said, well, actually, one of the things is politically, we have to have a governor of the state. It's going to be like a hunting ranch
Oh, okay.
where he's going to, bring in animals, game, and then he's going to have people pay money to shoot animals.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know the guns. So, but in the meantime, Meg, as we're discussing this, he's an early riser, so we would get up in the hotel 4:30 in the morning, and I would meet Lane in like the lobby where they'd be serving free coffee.
Yeah.
Lane and I would take a little bit of a walk or sit down, chat over coffee. Here's Lane from one part of the country. Here's this city slicker coming from another part of the country. And here we are chatting about who we are, where we're from,
Wow.
what we think. And so he winds up telling me about this dream that he and the son-in-law have, and that he's a couple of years away from giving up the bus driving, which he's excellent. And not only as a driver, but his persona is
Yeah.
perfect for it. And he's telling the city slicker, who just writes all the time about how much I love living downtown and urban living is the best. And so he's the Jeffersonian, I'm the Hamiltonian in this duo.
I love that
And
reference.
he's telling me about this, And I said, well, Lane, why the governor? Well, the governor's going to approve it one way or other. It's not necessarily going to have to go through the state legislature, but permits and whatnot have to go through the governor, which is why I was for Carrie Lake.
Oh, got it.
Okay. So, where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Now, as an outsider, I'm saying, Carrie Lake, are you kidding me? But this is where the two were willing to overcome any upbringing differences and political. I understood why he wanted her, why he voted for her.
Yeah.
He had a vested interest here. There's no
Right.
question about that. I'm thinking a little more globally
Yeah.
for the Arizonians, and I shouldn't be, but I
Yeah.
am. And that's what we Northeasterners oftentimes, and those of us in an Ivy Tower do. We
Yeah.
dictate to them. We have a view of the federal government. They do not. And so for me, going out there was a learning experience, or to enhance what I had already learned in previous ventures out west. The cowboy hat had to do with the fact that we were going horseback riding.
Okay.
And with Lane, I got on the cowboy boots. All right, so what boots would you recommend? And I looked at him, and he wore this really neat cowboy hat every day. And I said, well, what brand is that? Where'd you get that? And so what would you recommend? Because I'm going on this horseback riding. So he recommended that. So I went in, got this. I don't even remember what the price was. And he's telling me, get the bendable ones because you can put it in your suitcase. And of course, I'm looking at the bendable ones, and they're like, well over $100.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I got the cowboy hat, and at our last dinner before the trip concluded, I figured this city slicker is going to lighten up the crowd by wearing this cowboy hat. I would have wanted it on my horseback ride, but it was so windy.
Oh, you're going to lose your hat.
Now, to the point of the risk, it wasn't a risk going out there, because no matter where I go, I want to come back better educated and hopefully more open-minded about what they're thinking, and then they have a better understanding as to what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Lane said something to me one morning where he looked at me, and I'm going to have to paraphrase now, but it was powerful. He looked at me and he said, I know you without knowing you.
Oh, wow.
And I said, pretty powerful. Well, what do you mean by that? He said, your persona, your appearance, the way you present yourself. I'm in the business of knowing people. I said, well, I'm in the business of knowing people. Yeah. And he said, and I can tell. And what we concluded was that despite our geographic, political, socioeconomic, cultural background, there are certain values that are universal.
I like that. Yeah.
And we shared those values, which is why Northeast could meet West, Southwest.
Yeah.
And get along so well. But anyway, so to the risk taking of the trip, I am deathly afraid of heights.
Oh, okay.
Deathly afraid of heights. And it's not vertigo. I'm afraid of heights. And if I went to a psychologist, he'd probably say it relates back to something that your uncle did to you at John F. Kennedy Airport. And
okay.
I'm not blaming my uncle, nor am I getting psychoanalyzed. All I know is I'm deathly afraid of heights. I'm concerned about going to canyons.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so now I'm getting on a horse.
Wow.
And I'm going to be at the rim of the canyon. The rim of the canyon.
Oh my God.
Were we in Grand? No, we were not in Grand Canyon. We were in Zion, which to me is a greater drop. And it was.
Wow.
And so we were on a trail, and so there were several horses. My horse's name was Lady. And they do try to size you up physically, and then maybe judging sort of your personality, maybe.
Yeah.
And then
interesting. I didn't think about that. The personality has to match the horse.
Yeah. And then a horse that might be difficult to ride, even in a pack or on a trail. They want a certain personality. Am I better suited for a mule or a horse? Huh. Well, they gave me Lady, and of course, as the I forget what we called them. My apologies. The guy who's sort of leading this, got us all. There must have been about 14 of us in the group. We're already I think we're at that point, we're already matched up with our horses. And so he gave us sort of like this flight attendants prep for our going out on the trail. And this is going to be a lengthy ride, Meg, on the
Wow.
trail, and that it's windy, so guard your hats. And
But you're
which
not on the rim the whole way then, right?
not the
Okay.
whole.
Not the whole way.
It could be 30 seconds, and
Make a difference. You'd
I'm
be
gonna
like,
break
"No,
out in the
thank
cold
you."
sweat.
You're like, "No,
So
thank you."
he ends his presentation by saying, "Are there any questions?" And I would consider myself having I love horses. Next to dogs, I love horses. I would consider myself an intermediate rider, like, but on the rim of a canyon where there
No.
are no barricades, but gravel surface.
Oh, no.
So my question to the gentleman was, this cowboy was, so are we going to be close to the rim? And he said, yes, you are. And so I said, how close to the rim are we going to be? Because I'm deathly afraid of heights.
Yeah.
But this in part goes back to our theme.
Yeah, it
He
does.
looked at me and he said, and this is all he needed to say to me was, I just want you to know that horse is as afraid of that rim and the drop as you might be.
Oh, jeez, okay.
Well, it made me feel
But
good about
but for all of us out there, all of us, I think at a point in time, perhaps where maybe some people are contemplating, taking risks, and perhaps some people are, feeling stagnant in their world and, maybe too complacent and they need something more. And maybe they're at all different points in
Right.
their life. God knows where, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe teens. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
What would be a final inspiration that you could share with them tonight after this wonderful conversation?
Well, I think that our lives are journeys. We each have a different starting point, and we'll each have a different ending point.
Mm.
And I think you'll appreciate this because I was thinking about this question, a last inspiration, and the journey. And one of the things that I said to our tour guide, Carol Kendrick was her name. She's just so knowledgeable, extraordinary. Anyway, I could go on and on about her. I said to her, we started and we've this journey. It's been a 10-day journey. We reached our destination. We started in Vegas and we've reached our destination in Las Vegas. And now we will go our separate ways. But during the course of the 10 days, this journey has been an absolute, unadulterated, inspiring success. Our lives are journeys. And in those journeys that we take, we have to make lots of decisions, and many of them are risky decisions.
Mm.
And we do have to weigh and consider the consequences. I don't mean to make light of that. But we can't be paralyzed by what we don't know.
Mm.
We have to be moved and persistent and resilient in what we strive to accomplish and achieve.
Mm.
But I think you'll appreciate this as a former tennis player. It was the late Arthur Ashe who said, and I'm quoting Arthur Ashe,
Mm.
success is a journey, not a destination.
Mm. Yeah.
The doing is often more important than the outcome. So
I feel it's really true.
whatever it is that we do,
Mhm.
we can't necessarily predict the outcome of it. But if we're so tied up in what the outcome will be,
Mm.
we're not willing to take that journey and take those risks that the journey may in fact include or
Mhm.
have. And so I believe that with all my heart, that from my start to wherever I end, this is a journey. And along that journey, decisions are made, and we can't be paralyzed not to make those decisions that people have made us feel confident in making.
I love the story. I love the journey. I love everything you've said tonight about risks and how you make people feel, and all your wonderful stories about all these individuals who've impacted you and you've impacted. I want to thank you again, Mike, for this wonderful interview. Of course, you always say yes to the conversation with me, but I'm so incredibly grateful. So thank you, thank you, thank you for sure. Thank you for your patience as well.
No, it's always a pleasure. I love it.
I love all your wonderful inspirations. I will suggest everyone connect with Mike on Facebook. He is Mike Spatola. He has wonderful insights, wisdom that he shares all the time. I love it. It always brings information into my life that I probably would never know had I not known you. So even outside, because I'm not the sports person, and literally I learn more about it than with you. So anyway, I want to thank you so much. Thank you so much for that plug again. And I want to also
Butterfly Awakens.
And Butterfly Awakens.
Yes.
And I thank you always for being on my journey and being such a wonderful teacher and friend. And since our last interview, you interviewed me on my book. So that was quite wonderful. And definitely an experience that I'll never forget. That was wonderful. So I want to thank you. And remember, all of us, we're here to be deliberate creators of our lives. Dream big, get inspired, and get ready to manifest your dreams, and go take those risks. I'm wishing you all bliss. And the final word to you.
Have a great evening. And success is based on the journey, not the destination.
Amen. With that, go take your risks, and you got nothing to lose. All right.
Good night, Meg.
Good night.
And again, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Be well.